So Rayman was a pretty large hit on the PlayStation, so it was only natural that a sequel would be released. 4 years later, that is. 4 years! It took him 4 long years for more weird adventures of the weird limbless man. Well, luckily for me, I wasn't old enough to care at the time, and this brings us to Rayman 2: The Great Escape. This was the first Rayman game I actually played, and I had it on PC and had to use a keyboard to play it, which was bad, as Rayman 2 actually takes the series into 3D. But was making the jump to 3D so early in the Rayman series a stroke of genius, or was it just a messy mess in which should be spat upon? Let's find out. A quick note, I played a ROM to get the footage for this version, so there are graphical mistakes that aren't in the normal game. The game starts out with an opening cutscene explaining that the robot pirates, don't ask, have taken over Rayman's world, and it's up to Rayman to stop them and their leader, Admiral Razorbeard. Really, just don't ask. Remember how I said Rayman 1 had an unsettling edge to it? Well, you might call me a dirty liar after calling Rayman 2. This has to be the darkest 3D platformer out there. The game has a slave counter at the beginning and has creatures of the world begging for food or water. Super Mario 64 didn't have any of that. Me in this opening cutscene, we would be lovers if possible. The state of Rayman's world is so grim at the beginning that you really do see a need for a hero. Even Rayman is imprisoned by the pirates at the beginning and is sad that he can't fight back. Rayman feels like an actual hero thanks to this cutscene, as well as during the game he's always talking to his friends and trying to help them out. It's nice to have a lead character with a strong personality like this. Sure, platformers can do without it, but I'd rather have the world has gone to hell and only you can save it kind of attitude than, oh no, the princess has been kidnapped again. Rayman 2: The Great Escape is in 3D, meaning that there was some large changes. As 3D platforming was still in early stages back in the N64 and PS1 days, developers were making up their own rules about it. Games like Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie focused on large open worlds, whereas games like Crash Bandicoot kept it to a more linear style, getting from point A to point B. Rayman is more in the second category, although levels do feature large areas and levels sometimes connect. You also need to explore levels to find all the secrets. The game has collectibles in two forms. One are yellow lumps that are part of the heart of the world, and hidden cages from the first Rayman. In Rayman 1 you didn't really need to track down the secrets, but here, once you find enough hidden cages you actually get a health increase, so you're going to want to find as many as you can. The big question with this game is how good is the platforming. There aren't that many 3D platformers as it's so easy to get it wrong, but I'm happy to say that the platforming here is great. The main reason it works is because Rayman can use his head to hover to slowly descend, and he can grab on ledges of platforms. If you don't make a jump, it's completely your own fault, as these two game mechanics exist where you can save yourself. This isn't really an easy game either, so it's great that the platform can feel challenging without getting frustrating. The other main part of this game is the combat. Instead of throwing his fist like the first one, Rayman now shoots small glowy balls to hurt enemies. When you see an enemy you hold Z to lock on and then you can strafe to dodge attacks. It works really well, and even though enemies are actually rarer than you would think, fighting them is always fun. So this game has a good atmosphere, platforming and combat, but it also has something arguably more important: variety. Each level has you doing something different. In one you follow a whale, in another you get chased by a robot pirate ship. One section I love is when Rayman rides a chair that you have to spin in a three-dimensional space to avoid obstacles. It's a really great idea and it's also really fun to play. Another section I really love is the level where you get to hang out with Glowbox and make him rain dance on certain things. This game marks the first appearance of Glowbox, and to be honest, me and Glowbox would be lovers if possible. All the characters in this game are likeable, and even though they speak complete gibberish, their dialogue is still entertaining. The PlayStation version actually replaces the gibberish with full voice acting, so that's the version to play if you're not a fan of subtitles. Of course this game isn't perfect, so it's time to move on with what's wrong with Rayman 2. While I personally don't have a problem with the graphics, they haven't really aged too well, especially with certain textures. Also, the music overall is good, but the sound design seems a bit off. Music seems to play randomly and whole sections just don't have music. It's not a big deal, but it's something that you'll notice. There are certain sections where you ride a horse missile or get carried by a flaming barrel. These sections aren't bad, but you don't have as much control as you like, and you're constantly going forward, so it's easy to mess up and die. Luckily, Rayman 2 is a lot more fair than Rayman 1. Lives are completely gone, but when you fall into lava or a bottomless pit, you lose health and spawn at a nearby checkpoint. When you lose all your health, you start at some point earlier in the level. There is a lot of health in this game, so you probably won't completely die too much. You might think that this is making it hard to completely die, and that would make the game too easy, but it's actually just right. The game still feels challenging, but not getting harshly punished for mistakes makes the game enjoyable to play, even when it gets tough. Rayman 2: The Great Escape is one of the best 3D platformers of all time. If you've played a Rayman game before, it's probably this one, and for good reason. The game feel, the characters, the platforming, and everything else in this game was just done right. It's not perfect, but I always have a good time playing it, and I just can't help but love it. My score is going to be 9.0 out of 10. It might not reach the same heights as Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, but damn does it come close. I'm also going to mention that this game got remade on the PS2 and it was called Rayman Revolution. If I'm being honest though, I can't recommend this version of the game. They added a hub world in between levels which replaces the Hall of Doors, the cool level select in the original. They're bad as you have to sit through long loading screens, there's not much to do in them, and they're really colourful, ruining the grim feel that the original had. Rayman Revolution isn't bad, but I would stick with The Great Escape.